We first told you last night about surging fertilizer prices hitting Wisconsin farmers hard this spring. Today, we're hearing directly from a local farmer who is in Washington, D.C. today, talking to lawmakers and other farmers across the country about these kinds of issues. The cost of fertilizer is up 25% since the end of February. Experts point to disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical shipping lines. U.S. military tensions with Iran have disrupted access to those waters, cutting off 3 of the top 10 global fertilizer exporters: Iran, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Now that is burdening Wisconsin farmers who depend on those imports to meet spring planting needs.
2 weeks ago, you and I had spoken, and you had asked me, Josh, when's the worst time of year for something like the Iran situation to happen? I would have told you right now. This is the worst time of the year because, again, we are bringing in those last minute imports in order to meet our spring needs.
Food is a matter of national security. So to me, farmers are a matter of national security. And we're just trying to provide that safe and cost-effective food supply for you.
If fertilizer costs continue to climb, experts say consumers could eventually see the impact on prices at the grocery store if crop yields aren't as high as expected.